This video will demonstrate how to use a radial arm saw to add corner splines to picture frames or small boxes. The end grain of miter joints is difficult to glue, resulting in a brittle connection that may fail with the natural expansion and contraction of the wood. By cutting a slot through the joint, a glued-in spline will hold the pieces together better due to the greater surface area of the long-grain wood fibers. Spline slots are often cut using a jig with a table saw or router table, but this requires the frame to be held vertically and must move smoothly without side-to-side motion. The radial arm saw is an ideal choice to cut corner spline slots because the frames lie flat on the table surface and are easily and safely slid past the blade on a sled. To make a sled, you'll need a flat piece of 3/4 inch thick plywood. I'm using Baltic birch plywood for its flatness and stability. Additional 3/4 inch plywood strips will be laid down at 45-degree angles to serve as stops. It's important that the stops are set so the corner of the frame is set back from the edge of the sled and will not contact the fence. The stops are glued square to the sled. Toggle clamps can be added to help hold down frames. You can first cut slots in the frames and then make splines to fit the slots. Instead, I prepare my spline stock first and will adjust the slot width to fit the splines. Either way works, and the choice is yours. The secret to ripping thin strips on a radial arm saw is to not cut all the way through. Leaving the cutoff attached helps keep the blade from pinching or the small piece from ejecting. The thin strip can be broken off and the remaining block planed before cutting another strip. Here I'm rough cutting some cherry splines. To set up for cutting the slots, I'm rearranging my back tables to take advantage of my arbor recess. I'm also installing my shaping fence. The motor is set to the horizontal position and the yoke is rotated so I can install my shaper guard. The spline depth in the frame is adjusted by setting the blade position and locking the yoke on the arm. For safety, you need to install the shaper guard. Therefore, you'll need to use an 8-inch diameter blade or smaller to fit it. You also need to be mindful of the clearance between the blade and column, which is another reason to use a small diameter blade. The desired spline position in the frame is set by raising or lowering the column height. This is a good time to point out that a sacrificial top mounted to your table should always have a slight gap at the fence. This helps prevent sawdust from building up between the wood and the fence, or in this case between the sled and the fence. I generally like to put painter's tape on the corners to help prevent tear out on the backside of the cut. Depending on the spline thickness, you might use a dado blade adjusted to match the spline. In this case, I'm using my standard Freud LU83 thin kerf blade and will make 2 passes to fit the spline. I start by making the first pass cuts in all the corners. If you're making multiple frames, it's easy to batch process all at once. I measured these splines to be 0.155 inches thick. Since I know my blade kerf is 0.083, I need to increase the kerf by 0.072, or slightly greater than 1/16 of an inch. That's the same as raising the column a little more than half a turn. A test cut can now be made to check the spline fit. Since the spline fit is tight, the column height is raised slightly to increase the slot width. Another test and the spline fit is now perfect. It's easy to fine-tune the slot width. I'm now good to run all the frames through the second pass to finish the slots. Since these frames are made from Ipe, I'm using epoxy to glue in these cherry splines. I use the saw to remove the bulk of the spline excess. My disc sander attachment makes quick work to sand the splines flush. Additional sanding is needed to prepare the frames for finish. Paraffin oil brings out the beautiful color of this Ipe wood. Splines made from a different wood adds a nice contrast to the frame. Corner splines are both functional and add a decorative touch to your project. Thanks for watching.